Well, hello there. Happy Monday. If you're listening on Monday, it is September 23rd. It is the last full week of September. It's the first full week, second day of autumn. This is episode 1196 of Stand Up, and I'm very happy to have you joining me. My guest today is comedian, lawyer, and probably one of the best political commentators out there today, according to me. It's the great J.L. Cauvin, who also does some of the best impressions, especially of the disgraced former president in all of the land. We have an awesome conversation coming your way. It starts at 35 minutes in if you want to skip ahead to the interview. But first, of course, I've got your headlines and clips as I do every day. Nowhere do you get a better news recap in any daily podcast than right here at Stand Up. I want to say hello and thank you to all of my friends at the Florida Education Association. I'm sure many of you are listening to today's episode because you hosted me this past weekend in Orlando at your annual conference. It was a riot. I had so much fun. I'm so inspired and motivated by you. Gave a great speech performance on Friday night, moderated a panel on Saturday morning with some amazing labor leaders, and hopefully I'll get the audio for you from that ASAP and share that with listeners right here on Stand Up. It was amazing, wonderful, and thank you. I am so grateful to have been there, and you guys are awesome, doing amazing work down there in Florida. So thank you, and welcome to Stand Up. I have a feeling a couple of you have even already signed up for subscriptions, it looks like, and I can't thank you enough for that. Nothing can help this show more and be more than a paid subscription. That is how we keep this show going and keep building this community. I hope to see you at our Hangout this Thursday night, 8 p.m. I will be hosting, as I do each and every week. We get together, always a wonderful, magical time at our Hangout. So join us this Thursday at 8 p.m. East. And now let's get to those headlines that I've got for you. Then I've got audio clips coming up, as I do almost every Monday through Friday here on Stand Up. There are 43 days left until November 5th, the presidential election. They are going to be filled with anxiety and angst. The best way to beat that back is to do the work, do everything you can to help Kamala Harris and Democrats get elected up and down the ticket, save democracy, put people over profit, and hopefully make things just a little bit better, at least, if not save the country at best. So let's do it. Autumn has officially arrived. I love it. I'm happy about that. Love summer. Summer's great, but it is over and we are headed into fall. So get those autumn decorations out, get your pumpkin spice, whatever, and all of the rest. Stay in the moment, be present for it all, and know that the government is going to stay open. Well, at least until December. Let's get to those headlines. The Washington Post and every other news outlet reporting yesterday, congressional lawmakers agreed to a deal to avert a looming government shutdown, advancing a 3-month stopgap spending agreement with emergency funding for the Secret Service, and without the horrific, stupid, and in my mind, unconstitutional voter registration restrictions demanded by the disgraced former president. So they are going to irk him, shun him and what he wanted, which is to, again, shut down the government unless he got what he wanted, which would have contributed to the myth that he won the last election, if not for all the illegals voting. The package represents a setback for the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and his Republican Conference of Christian Nationalists, which spent the past 2 weeks demanding a longer funding bill with unrelated legislation attached requiring this stupid proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. But it also pressed closer against the September 30th shutdown deadline and mired with disputes within his conference, says the Washington Post. Christian Nationalist Speaker of the House Mike Johnson brokered a deal with the Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer and House Democrats to dodge what could have been a politically costly outcome. He's no different than John Boehner and Kevin McCarthy and the rest who could not make a deal with their own Republican members. All right, moving on, but still reading from the Washington Post. Several senior staff members have resigned from disgraced Republican and self-professed black Nazi Mark Robinson's campaign for North Carolina governor, as all these old posts he allegedly wrote on a porn site upend his campaign and threaten Republicans' prospects in a key battleground state of North Carolina. His campaign announced Sunday that 4 senior leaders had stepped down: the campaign manager, the main consultant, the finance director, and the deputy campaign manager. All of them should have been disgraced if they were working with the guy anyway. For his part, he said, "I appreciate the efforts of these team members who've made the difficult choice to step away from the campaign. I wish them all well in their future endeavors." According to the departures came days after this bombshell CNN report linked Robinson to the account of a porn site user who once argued for the reinstatement of slavery, detailed an affair with his wife's sister, I didn't know that one, and called himself a black Nazi. So that was a pretty crazy story. And it might just be the reason why Democrats win the presidential election on November 5th, because that's a key swing state. So get involved in North Carolina however you can. And one more from the Washington Post. For more than 3 weeks, question has loomed over Brazil and much of the tech world. Who would back down first? Would it be Elon Musk, who refused to comply with orders from a Brazilian judge that resulted in the suspension of Twitter in one of the largest markets? Or would it be the taciturn jurist who issued the order, that judge? Well, this weekend it appears to have brought the answer. The social network X, formerly known as Twitter, said Friday that it had taken steps to comply with demands issued by the Brazilian Supreme Court to end the impasse that has severed the company from one of its most active markets in Brazil. These included naming a representative in the country and blocking accounts that the judge had accused of propagating misinformation and undermining Brazilian democracy. Much of the company's fines have also been paid off. But that is a big key story, and I wanted to mention it here at the top. The other big story is, of course, coming out of the Middle East, Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a top Hezbollah leader vowed on Sunday to increase the intensity of their cross-border attacks, raising fears that the renewed conflict could escalate into all-out war. The Hezbollah official, Deputy Secretary General, said the Lebanese militia had entered a, quote, new stage of open warfare against Israel, while Prime Minister of Israel said his nation would take, quote, whatever action is necessary to diminish the threat posed by its adversary. The statements came after a tumultuous week of hostilities. Early on Sunday, Hezbollah launched about 150 rockets, cruise missiles, and drones, according to the Israeli military, targeting what appeared to be the deepest areas it has hit in Israel since the group began firing on it in October, a day after Hamas-led forces attacked southern Israel. Since then, Israel and Hezbollah have been engaging in tit-for-tat attacks, and it seems to be getting much, much worse. More on that later, but pay close attention to what's happening there, the new front of the war in the Middle East. Now, let's come back home. ABC News reporting, and I like this one, paper or plastic? Well, you'll no longer be a choice at grocery store checkout lines in the most populated state in the country. That's right. Under a new law, California, signed yesterday by Governor Gavin Newsom, it banned all plastic shopping bags from grocery stores. California already banned thin plastic bags at supermarkets and other stores, but shoppers could purchase bags made with a thicker plastic that purportedly made them reusable and recyclable. Well, the new measure, approved by state legislators last month, bans all plastic bag shopping starting in 2026. Consumers who don't bring their own bags will now simply be asked if they want a paper bag. Well, that took too long, but that's great news for California, and let's spread that around the world. And you probably know over the weekend that Kamala Harris, our great vice president, proved again on Saturday that Donald Trump is a chicken shit coward by agreeing to an October 23rd debate on CNN and daring him to join her. My friend Sam Youngman, writing over at my favorite daily newsletter, writes, almost immediately, Trump began peeing himself wildly, ruining 2 pairs of pants, 3 giant red ties, and his shoes. Kamala damn near scared him to the point of dehydration. So there he was in North Carolina a couple hours later telling everyone, it's too late to debate. If you need us to translate, that's chicken shit for I'm scared and I'm urinating on myself. So now it's our job to keep calling that gutless wimp a chicken shit every chance we get. Sound like a plan? I love those guys at Today's Big Stuff and the way that they write. All right, what else do I have for you? In politics, Vice President President Kamala Harris substantially outraised and outspent Donald Trump in August, according to new filings from the Federal Election Commission, which tracks such things. The Harris campaign raised more than $189 million in August, more than quadruple, 4 times, that is, the $44 million sum that the Trump campaign brought in, though the Harris campaign also outspent Trump in August. The vice president ended the month with $404 million in cash on hand, dwarfing Trump's $295 million war chest to fund the final sprint of the November election. If you have more, give more. A double-digit increase in popularity, rising Democratic enthusiasm, and an early edge for representing, quote, change have also vaulted Vice President Kamala Harris forward, reshuffled the 2024 presidential contest, according to a new national NBC poll, which is getting a lot of attention with just over 6 weeks until Election Day. The poll finds Harris with a 5-point lead over former disgraced President Donald Trump among registered voters, 49 to 44%. While that result is margin of error, it is a clear shift from July's poll when Trump was ahead by 2 points before President Joe Biden's exit. Great news. I don't mention the polls much, and we always have to act like we're 10 points down, but that was very encouraging. And so is this. Voter registration spiking, particularly among young adults. Voter registration breaking records as Election Day approaches, particularly among young people, many of whom are first-time voters. Who do you think they're voting for? On Tuesday's National Voter Registration Day, more than 150,000 people registered through vote.org, the most the organization has seen ever on that day. The organization registered 279,000 voters in all of last year. So 150,000 in one day is a huge deal. And last week, 337,826 people visited a link posted on Instagram by Taylor Swift. How about that? Taylor Swift directed over 330,000 people to register to vote at their state's voter registration site. So that is amazing news. And finally, the FDA authorized an at-home nasal spray flu vaccine. Get your flu shot. Now you can get it through a nasal spray, apparently. It's the first time it's approved a self-administered alternative to flu shots. AstraZeneca plans to make it available next fall. To be clear, it's not available yet. And the Federal Trade Commission took legal action against the 3 largest pharmacy benefit managers, accusing them of inflating insulin prices to boost their profits. Final headline: drug overdose deaths are falling across the U.S. According to New York Times, new research. They're not exactly sure why, but that is good news and a great place to end the headline segment of the news here. Now let's get to our sound clips, audio that I bring for you every day. And of course, I don't love the polls, the day-to-day polls and the reporting on them and the horse race. I don't trust it. But again, a really good news poll from NBC. We are just little over 40 days out. So I do want to bring you some of the audio from Meet the Press where Steve Kornacki and Kirsten Welker were breaking down this big NBC News poll. Just a couple of minutes of that report.
Steve, a lot of headlines here.
Certainly, Kristen. I mean, you're looking at the biggest. Harris 49, Trump 44, 5-point advantage for Harris in this poll against Donald Trump. And if we zoom out here and look at the bigger significance of this finding, we've been polling the 2024 race going back to last year. And you can see here, these are all the results on the left side of the screen from when Joe Biden was still the Democratic candidate. And now you see this is our first poll since Harris switched in. And look at that result.
You can see that the race has been completely reshaped since Harris took the top of the ticket.
Completely. And one of the things powering that lead we should note, too, there's a pretty pronounced gender gap at this point. Harris among women is leading in our poll by 21 points. Among men, Trump is leading by 12. That is a 33-point gender gap. That's enormous what we're seeing right here. Take a look at this, too. The debate, of course, happening in the last couple weeks. Nearly 30% saying that debate made them more likely to support Harris. Much smaller number for Trump. That might be helping her as well here. And then there's this. The view, the overall perception of Kamala Harris. Remember, before she got in the race, a lot of talk that, her numbers didn't look better than Biden's. She was 32 positive, 50 negative before getting in this race. And now this is what you see.
And we have to pause here because this is the largest increase that we have seen for any politician since George W. Bush in the wake of the September 11th attacks on this issue.
Absolutely, Kristen. I mean, we were seeing numbers like this for years for Kamala Harris. Now you're seeing a very different story. And what goes into that new level of popularity she has? Take a look here. If we can, there it is. Call this up here. Some of the groups that have gravitated the most towards Harris, just in terms of favorable, that is black voters, 24-point increase, independents, 20, young voters, 26. Young voters, this is a group where Joe Biden, when he was still in, he was putting up very, very poor numbers for a Democrat. With Harris, you could see a 26-point jump there in her favorable score among voters under 30.
All right, that's all I'm going to give you from that. Look for more over at Meet the Press at NBC. Now let's head over to CNN State of the Union. Jay Tapper was hosting the awful senator from Arkansas, Tom Cotton, who is one of the main apologists for the disgraced former president and attack dogs against Kamala Harris, our vice president. And he was there trying to somehow defend Trump's horrifically anti-Semitic statement over the weekend, where he said that if Republicans lose in November, if he loses, it would be the fault of Jews. He wants to blame Jewish American voters. And that's a really bad thing when they're under 2% of the population and even less of voters. But yet he still did it. And here is Jay Tapper, Jewish himself, questioning Tom Cotton. And normally I wouldn't play this, but I think Tapper does a great job pushing back consistently throughout these couple of minutes.
Are you comfortable with that? With Donald Trump saying if he loses preemptively, it's the fault of the Jews, a group already experiencing a rise of anti-Semitism in this country from the left and the right, but still preemptively it's the fault of the Jews?
Well, Jake, Donald Trump has been saying things like this for at least 11 months since the October 7th attacks. I think the only reason the Democrats latched onto it this week is they see the polling that reflects Donald Trump winning record high amounts of Jewish voters for Republicans. The point he's been making all along is that any Jewish voter, Christian voter, or any other kind of voter who cares about Israel, who cares about a relationship with Israel, should not vote for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Joe Biden has not backed Israel very much over the last 11 months. Kamala Harris has been much worse. She treats him she treats Benjamin Netanyahu like a school child. She's an assistant principal who's constantly scolding him. She didn't even perform her constitutional duty to preside over the joint session of Congress when he spoke to Congress.
But I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about American Jewish voters. The American Jewish Committee said, quote, whoever a majority of the Jewish community votes for, Jews, roughly 2% of the U.S. population, cannot and should not be blamed for the outcome of the election. Setting up anyone to say we lost because of the Jews is outrageous and dangerous. Thousands of years of history have shown that scapegoating Jews can lead to anti-Semitic hate and violence. That's the nonpartisan American Jewish Committee. I've never heard you say anything like that. If we lose, it will be the fault of the Jews.
But, Jay, Donald Trump, again, has been saying for months that anyone who cares about Israel, anyone who cares about the fate of the U.S.-Israel alliance should vote for him. They shouldn't vote for Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris has consistently been the most anti-Israel voice in this administration.
You keep talking about Israel. I'm talking about Jewish voters who vote for any number of reasons on any number of issues.
And he was at an event talking about combating anti-Semitism here and around the world. When was the last time Kamala Harris spoke at an event about combating anti-Semitism?
Her husband is Jewish and is in charge of a group about combating anti-Semitism in the United States.
But she's consistently been opposed to what Israel needs to win.
Again, not just I keep talking about Jewish voters in the United States, and you keep talking about another.
A lot of Jewish voters, just like a lot of Christian voters, care deeply about the fate of the Jewish nation and the status of our relationship with Israel.
Are you comfortable with him blaming it on the Jews preemptively?
The point he is making is that anyone that cares about that relationship shouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. They should vote for him. And again, he's been saying things like this, not just at anti-Semitism events, but speaking to Christians who care about Israel as well for months. The only reason the Democrats have latched onto it as now is that polls show he's winning a record number of Jewish voters. This is the
first time he has ever said, if I lose, it will be the fault of Jews. This is, believe me, I happen to have a pretty good ear for when people say things like this, and that's the first time he's ever said that. Just yes or no. Are you comfortable with him using that language?
Jake, it's the same kind of language he's been using for months.
That doesn't mean it's okay.
Yes, but it's his point. Jake, he's the most pro-Israel president we've ever had. He has Jewish grandchildren. Of course.
How Kamala Harris has a Jewish husband. That doesn't mean anything to you.
Of course. Well, it means something to you because you brought it up. But of course,
we're talking about anti-Semitism, and he's in charge of the group combating anti-Semitism.
Jake, it's the Democratic Party that has a large and growing anti-Semitic wing. That's the party where anti-Semitism has festered now for years.
Let me just say, as somebody who has been at the receiving end of anti-Semitism from the left and the right, there's a lot of it out there. It's from the left and the right.
All those college encampments at Columbia and elsewhere, do you think those are conservative students? Of course not. They're radical left-wing students.
All right. There you go. Jake Tapper doing a pretty good job there with Tom Cotton. One might ask why you would invite him on at this point, given that he's a proven liar. But I still thought that was worth listening to. And, everybody's a commentator. Everybody's a pundit now. Anybody with a phone and an internet connection and a brain who can articulate themselves. And sometimes people do a great job. And this was a random North Carolina woman. Not sure what her name is, but a lot of people were sharing this yesterday. She's an exasperated North Carolina voter. And, of course, coming on the heels of this report of the terrible Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson and his terrible things that he has said, I just wanted to play this 2 minutes of this lady standing on her porch making a video for all of us from North Carolina.
Good morning. Just wanted to make a testament to the world. As an American citizen, as a citizen of the state of North Carolina, one of the most hopeless things that has happened to us is to be confronted with a candidate for governor of this state who is advocating for things such as the renewal of slavery, that women should not be allowed to vote, that women who have sex are evil and need to be controlled. This after a lifetime of fighting so that every person in this country, black, white, yellow, red, male, female, could have their rights and be able to pursue life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And here in the latter days of my life, when I should, as a retiree, be enjoying the fruits of my labor, I have to be confronted with the fear that my autonomy is being taken away by this theocratic society. It is the biggest affront to those of us who have fought throughout these years for equal rights for everyone, to have this person running for governor of our fair state on a platform that's based on discrimination. It is ironic and it is ghoulish. And it marks the end of something, the end of the hope that I had that we can ever have a union, a more perfect union. The very people who've been the recipient of hundreds and thousands of years of discrimination, turning around and kicking other people, kicking trans people, kicking single mothers, kicking people who don't subscribe to your religion. It is an affront to the idea of freedom. It shall not stand.
Well, there you go. I thought that woman was very eloquent, and I wanted to share that one with you. And now let's move on to what I think is a hilarious brief clip from those great comedians, the good liars, who were at a Trump rally and went up to one of the Trumpers and asked him this.
What do you think about Taylor Swift?
I can't stand her. I think she should just mind her own business and sing songs.
What do you think about Kid Rock?
I like Kid Rock.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think he's a great American.
Kid Rock has a song where he says, you to AOC and Nancy Pelosi.
Well, I wish more people would sing that song.
But he's not minding his own business.
Yeah, but they're assholes.
I just love that guy's hypocrisy and the way he lays it out there as confidently as anyone possibly could. What a dick. All right, good clip, though, nonetheless, pointing them out. Those guys do such a great job. All right, now let's go to CBS. It's CBS News Sunday morning, and they had former director Leon Panetta on, and he referred to Israel's pager operation as terrorism. That's Leon Panetta saying Israel conducted a terrorist attack in Lebanon last week with mass explosions of pagers and walkie-talkies belonging to members of the Iran-backed Shiite group, allegedly Hezbollah. The attack has been widely attributed to Israel's intelligence organization Mossad, leading to deaths of dozens of people, wounding thousands. Here it is.
Still exploding pagers and walkie-talkies on the scale that we saw this past week. killing dozens and injuring thousands, including children, some viewed as a deception one step too far. The United Nations labeled the operation a violation of international law, and it's raised some eyebrows here at home, too.
Ability to be able to place an explosive in technology that is very prevalent these days and turn it into a war of terror, really, a war of terror. This is something new.
Is it terrorism?
I don't think there's any question that it's a form of terrorism.
Former Defense Secretary and former Director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, wasted no words in describing what he fears may be the result of letting this particular genie out of the bottle.
This has gone right into the supply chain, right into the supply chain. And when you have terror going into the supply chain, it makes people ask the question, what the hell is next?
It sounds like you're genuinely worried.
I am. This is a tactic that has repercussions. And we really don't know what those repercussions are going to be.
At the very least, he's worried Israel's tactical decision has made the prospect of a wider war in the region closer than it's ever been.
The forces of war are largely in control right now of what's going on.
Do you think there should be condemnation for it? Should other nations step in, including us?
I think it's going to be very important for the nations of the world to have a serious discussion about whether or not this isn't an area that everybody has to focus on, because if they don't try to deal with it now, mark my word, it is the battlefield of the future.
Wow, scary stuff from Leon Panetta, but also he is not pulling his punches, calling it a terrorist tactic headed into the supply chain. You got to worry about what's in your food or what's in your phone. It's not good. And I appreciate Leon Panetta's comments there. And now I'm sorry for making fun of him for droning on the final night of the DNC. There you go. Former CIA head Leon Panetta, and on CBS Sunday Morning. All right, let's head over to the governor of Minnesota, who is Kamala Harris's pick for VP running mate. He was in Pennsylvania over the weekend. Here he is going after J.D. Vance, who he will debate on Tuesday, October 1st. I will host a hangout for that. Hope to see you there. Let's go.
They drew up the playbook. They know. But I want to tell you something. It's what and how they think about this. My opponent, Senator Vance, had a quote that you read it and you hear it, you gloss over it. But think about how deeply disturbing this is. He said that when they get power, and they will use the Project 2025, they need to be ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power. Who says ruthless in the exercise of power who's running for a democratically elected position? This is not about power. This is about public service. This is not about power. It's about governing.
Meanwhile, here's what J.D. Vance sounded like when he was campaigning in Pennsylvania.
What I said is that we create media stories. In other words, we focus the people's attention on what's already going on. Does anybody really think, I challenge you, go to Springfield, Ohio, which has been overwhelmed by 20,000 Haitian immigrants. Go to any community that's been overwhelmed by Kamala Harris's illegal alien policies and tell me that these are stories made up by politicians.
Well, the Springfield mayor, city manager, and police all say they're made up. So does the Republican governor of Ohio. So there you go. Let's head back to the good guy. It's Tim Walz again.
That iron from the northern Minnesota Iron Range fueled the steel mills here right in the Lehigh Valley. Together, it was our people that built the tanks that won World War II and freed the world from Nazi oppression. And I don't know if you noticed Nazi tyranny. We got folks running as Republicans for governor that are proud to refer themselves as Nazis. Let's not pretend that there's a gradual difference between the folks that are running here, that they're running together.
Yeah, there you have it. Good stuff from Tim Walz. And by the way, what did J.D. Vance say when he was confronted about the black Nazi, Mark Robinson? He's always going to be known as the black Nazi. That's how he referred to himself, of course.
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
What? I don't believe him. I don't not believe him. First of all, that's not, you can't say that. That you can't, that's, no one's ever said that, I don't think, about anything. Not your relative or your spouse or anybody, because why try to have it both ways in that case? And you're running for vice president. Why not take a stand? Well, we know why not, of course, but also we should just let these things play out in the court of public opinion. Just more of the same. Just, let the people decide if reality is reality. I don't believe or not believe that the earth is made of cheese. I'll let the people decide about that, because I wouldn't want to lead anybody anywhere and take a stand on anything. Certainly not against our dear leader, my daddy, Donald Trump. All right, finally, let me just play some comedy for you. I like to end on comedy, and today's clip is brought to you by our guest, J.L. Cauvin. Nobody does a better Trump impression than him, and his new impression has Trump kind of unraveling the way he did in the debate and has since just kind of seemingly panicked. That's what everybody's saying. And you don't have to know anything about sports. You don't have to know anything about baseball or the particular player that he is referring to here, but all you need to know is this guy who plays for the Los Angeles Dodgers, Shohei Ohtani, might be one of the best of all time, certainly had one of the best baseball games ever the other day. And the only important thing is that he is a Japanese guy. And now here is JL as Trump referring to his performance and what it means.
So they're sending Japanese people, they're sending them to our towns. They sent them to California. This is what happens under Sleepy Joe and Kamala Harris. They're letting everybody. You have a guy, you have a Shohei Ohtani. Okay, this is a Japanese guy. He goes to L.A., he takes all our baseball records, and he's eating the fish. They do that in Japan, and they'll say not to say this, sir, but they're eating the fish. They don't even cook the fish. They don't even cook the fish. They roll it around in their rice, and they call it sushi or Shohei, and it's a disgrace. He's taking the records. You have American baseball players, okay, who can't play. They can't play the game because they sent Shohei Ohtani over here with Godzilla -1, and he's dominating and he's taking everything. And if you have a goldfish in your house, he'll take it, he'll eat it raw. They call it sushi. I don't like it. I don't think it's American. And you have Shogun. All of a sudden you have Shohei taking over our baseball game. This is what Kamala Harris wants. She doesn't even want us to have baseball anymore. And then all of a sudden you have Shogun winning all the Emmys. I don't know if they're related to Shohei Ohtani. It certainly sounds like they are. But the point is, you have our TV awards, our home runs. Japan is stealing them. They're taking it. They're letting it happen. We won't have a country. It's called national pastime. We won't even have baseball. And they're sending Godzilla here, and he's going to destroy our towns, and they're eating the fish raw while they hit home runs. What happened to hot dogs? You can't even get a hot dog. Shohei Ohtani, he's eating them all, and it's, I don't know what we're going to do, but it's a disgrace, and we have to have a shutdown for Shogun, a shutdown for Shohei, but they're going to open it up. Kamala Harris, Sleepy Joe, assistant Coach Walz, because he's just an assistant. They're going to let every Japanese, they're going to take over everything. It's going to be Linsanity. I don't even know if that guy was Japanese. It's going to be like Gung Ho. Remember Gung Ho? Michael Keaton, he's Beetlejuice, but they took over the car factories, and then they brought Shohei, and he did 50-50. We don't know if he's going to do 80-80. It's going to be horrible, and it's bad, and I think, I don't know what, it's a geisha, something's happening, our country is lost, we're going to get destroyed by Godzilla.
So great. There you go. All right. Well, let's get to him now. My conversation with him. We talked on Sunday night, and he is a regular here on the show. He's a good friend of mine, of course. He is a member of our community, a subscriber to my show, and I am to his. One of my favorite podcasts is Rain on Your Parade. If you like movies, you'll love the last episode. I don't love listening to people talk about TV and film, but I certainly loved that one. Of course, Making Podcasts Great Again, where he does his Trump impression. He's now appearing as Trump, which I've begged him to do for years at some of his events, including this weekend live in New Jersey. Then he'll be starring in an off-Broadway show. How about that? It's Dictator for a Day. We talk about that. He stars as Trump in this off-Broadway show. 3 shows, a limited run. We talk about that at the end of our conversation. That is in New York City, October 4th through 6th. Back out on the road, you can see him in Pittsburgh in mid-October, then Illinois, Virginia, Connecticut, back in New Jersey in November, Pennsylvania in December. Check it out, jlcauvin.com. Listen to his podcast. He was popped into our Hangout last week, and I forget who it was. I think Tom said he hired him for a cameo, and they loved it. You can hire him for a cameo. Follow him on social media, YouTube, etc. Let's do it right now with one of the best, JL Cauvin. Wonderful. You've had quite a run lately, yes?
Yeah, I think so. I had, after the debate, I had a video crack over 1 million views, which hasn't happened in a few years.
Wow.
So that was good. But it was good because Trump, as he is the gift that keeps on giving, he introduced like a new, how there's like different Barbies. There's Malibu Barbie and like Corvette Barbie or whatever. This was Paranoid Debate Trump, where it was like all of a sudden after being lethargic and slurry-speeched for a while, he was all of a sudden, I think I'm losing, I'm going to jail, so now I'm talking about pets and I'm very animated. In other words, it took away like 20 years of aging, the paranoia and the fear of losing. It like juiced him up temporarily.
Whose observation was that?
Mine.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're so inside the guy. And once you made that observation, I was like, yeah, he really does seem to be off his game. And people say that all the time. But now he almost got killed that time. And apparently there's reporting that he's suffering from anxiety, which would track if you're a human.
I think I said it on your show a couple months ago. About all jokes aside, everybody talked about Biden's fitness to run because of his age and his slowing down. But I said, nobody, just like they didn't with Kyle Rittenhouse, they just turned, whether you think Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero or a criminal or something in between, a 17-year-old kills 2 people. You should be deep in therapy, not at Mar-a-Lago, like personal appearances. Trump, it's a thing where you go, you just went through an incredibly traumatic experience. So why don't you, but that would require saying, oh no, maybe you're not fit to run, not by any fault of your own, but because these circumstances are pretty incredibly scary.
Now, see, it's that kind of commentary that I respect so much, which is why when you were just ranting on the platform for the train the other day and you shared that on Twitter, I then shared it with a comment. I said, this guy's simply one of the best political commentators out there, whatever I said. And you were there at our Hangout to talk about that last Thursday, which is fun because you often join us. You're a member of our amazing community. But Mark Hamill, basically, what he referred to that and gave it even more attention. And I thought this was the first time Hamill had mentioned you, but of course he's a longtime fan. Nonetheless, just talk about what it feels like to have Skywalker on your side. What did he say exactly?
He said, love JL Cauvin. He is the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I approve that message.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Mark Hamill. I love me as well and think I'm the best. No, it's very nice. These are people who obviously have the ability to, as I've learned in the past, these people, they have the ability to change your trajectory. That's what's crazy about social media. This didn't really change my trajectory, but it's a nice thing to people and to say, hey, just because my friends from high school don't give a shit what I'm doing, it turns out people who've been wildly successful and talented do care what I'm doing.
I loved it. I was so happy to see it. Okay, so speaking of which, I do want to get some more of your commentary on all the goings on. First of all, about that second attempted assassination, what are your feelings about how it was handled by the media and the fact the guy actually never did fire a shot, and Trump just being in harm's way and all of it? Because that was your commentary about the rhetoric. Tone down the rhetoric, right?
Yeah. The thing is, this is one of those where Trump is claiming to have been shot at, which is not true. And of course, like Trump, hate Trump, an attempt on the president's life, huge news. A second attempt, very huge news. But I think this should have been treated more in the spirit of a man was outside the gates of the White House and threw an object over the fence, and that gets coverage. Something like that always gets coverage. But it doesn't get the, my God, we're coming apart as a nation. The president is under constant attack. But I felt like he, of course, wants to feed that narrative because I only got 5 days of positivity after they actually shot me in the ear. So maybe we can get another 5 days if I say somebody tried to shoot me again. But yeah, as far as the rhetoric goes, this is becoming so stale and tired, the sort of pearl clutching it reminds me of an ex of mine. And I'm going to tell you something that happened with an ex of mine many years ago.
All right.
She was an incredibly hurtful, cruel person. And I had enough and but spoke in terms of, you've really hurt me here and I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. And that just generally, that was the tone. And she actually had the MAG audacity, if I can combine MAGA and audacity, to go, wow, like you're really making me feel bad saying how bad I made you feel. And I was like, what? And that seems to be the essence of the MAGA movement, which is slurs, violence, violent rhetoric, cruelty, ignorance. Hey, don't you say anything about me. And the thing with calling Trump when they say, and Bill Maher did say it plainly to Brett Stevens this past week on his show, talking about, you call him a threat to democracy. And of course, that's alarmist language. That is intense language. And Bill Maher said, yeah, but it's true.
His current vice president running mate once called him Hitler. So when it comes to rhetoric, there's so many more examples. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's one of these things where I like when I did my joke about my video after Trump got shot the first time, and I did a video like a half hour after, and you get all these comments from MAGA people like, oh, great, here it is. I guess this is the tolerant left. They want the freedom to be cruel. And then, hey, the minute you punch me back, I will call you a hypocrite because they want the heads we win, tails you lose life of, we can pummel you and insult you and be awful to you. And the minute you do something back, oh, wow, hypocrites, you're always talking about, how could I ever follow your example of love, tolerance, peace, happiness when you're clearly hypocrites because after the 900th infraction against you, you said something about me. It's pathetic. It is Trump to a T, which is I am all powerful, but I'm also the biggest victim. So if you're not in awe of my power, please treat me like a special needs puppy. So it's just, at this point, his polling, it seems immovable. He seems so locked in that it's scary. Win or lose, we're in a ridiculously stupid country. And when it goes back to the Obama presidency, was very divisive. And to me, and my friend Rod of the Black Guy Who Tips made this point as well recently, which is to say, yes, he upset racists, where technically that's divisive, but we used to be a country where the underlying reason and cause had something to do with how we categorized something. In other words, the racists being mad that the president is black is not something that should be given equal weight to normal, healthy citizens.
Right.
When we go, hey, the Civil War, very divisive. But do we say both sides? Do we both sides the Civil War? No. The Civil Rights Movement, incredibly divisive. But we don't treat the opponents of civil rights with the same weight and importance as the people who want civil rights. Similarly, Barack Obama is a black president. Boy, oh boy, did that divide the country. And it seems that became the time where it actually became politically advantageous to just say, we're divided, and who cares how we got divided? I blame the person who divided us.
Yes. Yes.
And the little girls who went to school, the black children who desegregated Little Rock high schools, very divisive kids. They were incredibly divisive.
Now, they were very divisive, those children.
Right. If they had stayed home,
school,
everything would have been fine, but they decided they wanted to rock the boat. That's how ridiculous it is. The whole the response to Obama through the Trump era is this, we're going to now treat division as content neutral. So it doesn't matter who's doing the dividing or for what reasons they feel there's division. As long as there's division, the same way when Biden said he's going to try and reach out to both sides, he did. He didn't say, I'm going to stop being president if Republicans obstruct me. He said, I'm going to reach out. And he did pass some bipartisan legislation. That's the thing people ignore. He actually did what nobody's been able to do in a while.
That's right.
And yet, such a divisive presidency, yes, because it turns out our country has a tremendous amount of ignorant, racist garbage.
Speaking of which, your dad is Haitian, came to the United States, became your dad. That makes you half Haitian. And you have followed closely all kinds of issues regarding Haiti throughout your life. And you've talked about them here with me. I've learned from you about them. And, of course, you see what's happened in Ohio. And I don't know how quite. It's got to be the most disgusting and most enraging, one of the most enraging things, because in this case it was the president and vice president basically coming up, rather the president and senator from Ohio making up a story, putting people in danger, not only Haitian kids, but anybody in those towns, with the folks that are borderline on the fence with guns, access, who knows what could happen. And they made it all up.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the Haitians in Springfield, very divisive people.
Exactly. A perfect example of this. How dare they come to that town?
Legally. How dare they come legally and fill jobs that were undone?
What are you have had some time to think about this. It doesn't seem like it's going anywhere too soon. There's still J.D. Vance still perpetuating it, not denying it. He's been called on it. Everybody and Republican officials have weighed in on it, debunking it. What do you make of it as a media story, as a human story, as a political story, and where we're at right now with that kind of horrible thing, another big lie, animating people and creating tremendous amounts of danger for actual Americans, Ohioans, and others?
Now, my father passed away in 2017, but he was alive to see Trump become president. I'm not saying that's what killed him, but he only lived 1 month of the Trump presidency, February 2017. But as he watched Trump campaign, I remember sitting with him watching TV in the nursing home with him, and he got a morbid kick out of Trump. Not in a supportive way, but in I come from a country where I lived through various political upheaval and dictatorships. And he was seeing America, who he always had a love-hate relationship with America. It provided safety and opportunity. It also provided racism, like when him and my mom went to the Poconos and were told there were no rooms available, like after they had a reservation, because all of a sudden the biracial couple shows up, things like that. But he was a very cynic of America while appreciating its benefits. He was obviously here. He raised a family here. He stayed here. But he always found the sort of raw Reagan America and so on humorous, because he was like, they're not as good as they think. And I think seeing Trump, a basic hack third world dictator, like despots for dummies, like like seeing that in America was a little schadenfreude for my dad, because it was, see, you've always told me my whole adult life, this country is better than all the others, and you can look down on other countries and judge other countries. And now you're even worse in some respects, because you have all the advantages, all the power, all the comforts, generally speaking, and you still have retreated through stupidity and bigotry to somebody who looks like he should a tin pot dictator.
Yeah.
Basically. And he could see that.
Yeah.
And so he found a little bit of morbid humor in that. But as far as what's going on in Ohio, and I just finished this book, I think I mentioned it during the Hangout, called The Aftershocks of History by Laurent Dubois. Amazing history of Haiti, because I knew, talking to my family and my father especially, different stories and things like that. But this is a comprehensive history of Haiti. And if there were more of an audience for this kind of joke, I'd say, wow, if J.D. Vance and Trump think what Haitians are doing to Ohio is bad, wait till they find out about the decades-long military occupation of Haiti by the U.S. military. Wait until they find out they were basically arming dictatorships there. And this country, or part of this country, has truly forgotten what this country is about. I would respect more if J.D. Vance and Trump made the blatant, these people aren't like us. If they just played Kendrick Lamar, they're not like us at their rallies, until they were told to cease and desist. But they're playing this they're playing with the facts. They're going, oh, they're illegal. No, they're not. Like, that's an incredibly important thing. Even if you're arguing a sort of cultural difference or the town upheaval, you could make an argument, just like you can make an argument against affirmative action or other things. You can make an intellectual argument and say, hey, we're pro-immigrant, we're pro-legal immigrant, but we have to respond and respect the upheaval and the radical change this represents to some ordinary towns. That's at least an argument that you can listen to and rebut. But when you have to start changing major facts, like they're legal, not illegal, they're not eating pets, this is the stuff of, and it might have been Bill B who said, like, Rwanda.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff where, once again, we're slow walking this, going, no, but we're not like those countries. So, like, what they're doing, I don't know. Suggesting a population that's here legally and working hard is subhuman, basically, that they're primitive, subhuman people.
And spreading disease. If you weren't worried about your cat, now they're also spreading disease. They've said that over and over. Which is
right. And I just finished the book that we talked about again. And it's so funny that these two books were the last two books I read, because it was 2 weeks ago. It wasn't like, hey, I just read a book on Haiti and immigration. What a shock. 2 weeks ago, these books became incredibly relevant. And it was the book by Everyone Who Is Gone Is Here.
Did you read it yet?
I just finished it.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to talk to him. Jonathan Blitzer. I haven't read it. I have it, but I'm going to interview him.
You got to read it. It's not only is it a comprehensive history of, like, immigration, but you start to see all these things that we do this as a country so much, whether it's slavery and reparations, whether it's immigration. We cut the frame to the last 6 months. We don't look at root causes. We don't look at our role in perpetrating violence and destruction in Central America for decades. Just like climate change is going to be another one of those things where we're going to have refugees, as we already do. He talks about Honduras being, I think, particularly climate related. We're going to have climate refugees, and going, no. And who do you think who helped create the climate? Us. It's always going to come back to countries like us creating so many of the different problems that we then go, just like people here will say, I didn't know, my family didn't own slaves. We're going to do that with every issue. That's going to be the philosophy. It's okay. Climate change is okay. Sorry, but we still can't let 100,000 of you in just because we ruined your country or helped ruin your country. And the book on Haiti, the book on what's it called? The Northern Triangle? Is that the term for Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador?
I'm looking.
But so this is just another example of, and I hate to I'm getting so macro on this, but I do think, and I said this on a recent episode somewhere, I can't remember if it was you or on my show. It was on my show where I said, Trump could only emerge now because I think social media, I think cell phone, I think our low attention span, I think our increasing attention on self and not on community is really impactful. And I said, Donald Trump, if you show me him in any era of the United States, I can give you a reason why they would have rejected him. The founders would have been disgusted by him.
Well, reality television.
The Confederacy would have thought he was a coward.
I just interviewed the New York Times authors, the co-authors of that book, Lucky Loser, which looks at all his finances. And it was a long chapter more about The Apprentice. So I think you're right on. But reality television created the myth of him being a super wealthy, successful guy when a lot of New Yorkers knew that he'd been bankrupt and he was a phony. And so that was also a part of the Times that created him, is that show and that era of television.
But I would say even look at whether it's Bill Clinton or even George W. Bush, the criteria pre-iPhone still was like, as shallow as it might have been, it was,
Agreed.
I want somebody to have a beer with.
No doubt about it. No, it's.
And now it's, I want somebody who fights. I want somebody who sticks it to the other side.
Right.
And that whole culture, I think Trump, it was the perfect storm for someone like him that, in my opinion, never existed in this country. You cannot point to me somebody so wholly lacking in all traditional criteria to be a leader in our country's history. You can point to bad presidents, but might have been a governor, might have done this, might have been a war hero, something admirable or a qualification that we said, yeah, but he's a general. So if he sucks at president, but like at least we know he's got courage and leadership. Trump has zero. He has zero criteria that we've ever considered worthy or useful to the office of the presidency. He is the social media president. He is that. Now, Obama was both in a way. He had the charisma and the history making and the telegenic talent, but he also had the substance. Although he was a relative novice, he clearly had the poise, the leadership, the intellect. You could point to things about him that you'd say that's a. But Trump is the social media president because I don't think anyone close to him could have ever been elected president before our current time. And I feel like we're not at the bottom of the pit yet as far as whatever cultural shithole we're in.
Speaking of the bottom of the pit, let's just go through where circling the drain this past week. Black Nazi seems like it's got to be somewhere close to the bottom. Mark Robinson is the Republican nominee for North Carolina. A lot of smart Republicans saying as a result of what we've learned about him, it's even more likely that Republicans will lose the state, certainly that election. But Josh Stein is the attorney general there. Apparently he's up by 10 already. What do you make of the revelations and the reactions from everybody from Trump, who ignored it during a rally, to J.D. Vance, said, I don't know if he did or did not do it, tried to have it both ways, to Tom Cotton and others, and their reactions to it. The things that he said, is reported to have said, are as bad as it gets, but he'll still get a lot of votes. What do you make of that guy and that situation?
He's a pastor, right? Isn't he a pastor?
Yeah, but I do feel like there's several and just a handful of black, quote, pastors that had a flock of 7 in a living room somewhere, and then they just jumped on the Trump train to be the black MAGA guy.
Sure.
And he immediately platformed them.
When I did one college show, and then my intro for a couple of years was Does Clubs in College.
Right. Exactly that.
Well, Kanye, if I were advising Mark Robinson, which I never would, I would say you made these remarks around when? 2012, 2013? Well, Kanye had a song on a popular album called Black Skinhead, and it was even featured in the trailer for The Wolf of Wall Street. And I would just argue, I misquoted the song. There, we've cleared that problem up.
One way out.
Now, why, Pastor, are you on a porn site claiming you like all sorts of different things and you wish there was still slavery? Pastors don't get to choose their flock. Sometimes preaching to the choir in church is not what I am called to do. I go to where the sinners are, and that is trans porn sites that are pro-slavery. And that's where I went to minister. So when do I get my job in GOP public relations? Crisis management. It's disgusting, but it's once again, we've drawn these weird lines now where it's like, oh, this was too far. Do you know you do, I'm sure, all the terrible things? Like my friend Rod is a North Carolina resident.
Oh, really?
He's been talking about him for a while. This guy's awful. He's awful. So it's weird that it's like now post-Trump, we've just decided this week, Black Nazi will be the line. But no, rape is not the line yet. But saying you want to bring back slavery, if you're black, is the line. Now, there's all these arbitrary, he was garbage. He was very obviously a garbage person, a terrible person, an inflammatory, gross bigot before this. So it's, but this is the problem?
And the other thing just about it is Trump and other Republicans could win state and nationwide if they didn't constantly endorse these crazy people that have crazy pasts that are sure losers in even more conservative districts and states. Like they could have won that race with a quote normal Republican, and that potentially could contribute to winning the Electoral College for Trump. Yet he continues to shoot himself in the foot by endorsing people that cannot win because they're too crazy.
But that's what he does. That's the thing. John Starks, this is for Professor Siegel, if he's listening, this is a basketball reference. I have friends who always complain about John Starks in 1994 costing the Knicks the finals when he shot 2 for 18 in the finals. And I said, yes, but John Starks being that kind of a player also helped get you to a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And it's very hard to turn off what's been successful when athletes are trained. It's like, I do what I do. I have trained my whole life to do what I do, and I just had a bad game. Donald Trump, what got him political success and the Republican Party success was his offensive, brash, unpolitical, uncouth manner. And it's ego-driven, and you can't turn that off. You can't turn off what he does. You have to accept the bad with it. And the Republicans have decided to accept the bad with it. And he likes these guys who are bomb throwers and, want to please him. It's all in service to his ego. So when it's like some guy that's a brash bomb thrower, he likes that. And that's what matters to him. He can complain about losing an election and he'll blame someone else. But you can't it's like you've decided to ride with the Trump method. And that's that's a drawback of the Trump method, is that when he likes people that are like him,
yep.
But nobody likes the bullshit he shares except if it's coming from his mouth.
Well,
he hasn't seemed to make that connection because he's a fucking idiot.
He's very short term too, and it's worked out until it doesn't. I got to ask you about, I'm looking at my notes. We did that RFK and Olivia Nuzzi, the reporter from New York Magazine. What should the story be? Where should the focus be? I can see it all ways. My first reaction was this is should be more of a story about RFK because he's been such an important figure in this campaign, and he's endorsed Trump, and he has this history of horrible behavior with women, and now he's done something I think unethical, but a lot of people that I know and respect are saying the story should be about Olivia Nuzzi. She did something very unprofessional, and we have to take a look at all of her reporting to see if it was biased as a result of whatever kind of relationship she was carrying on with him, which apparently wasn't physical. But what do you think?
Were they sexting?
It looks like they never touched each other, but they were maybe sexting, or sending videos or pictures or something of that nature, clearly crossing the line for her as a reporter. You've just put out a hilarious impression of RFK that I will share, but what do you make? What's your analysis of that relationship, and where should the attention be?
I think on both, to be honest, but I think I would say more of the attention in a normal society would be on RFK because he's the bigger figure. He's connected, potentially a cabinet player for Trump in a new administration. But I think we have a particular hatred of the media right now that makes her at least as attractive a target, if not more attractive, because it's like, our country right now is really the one thing I think so many of us have in common with Trump is deflection of blame. And we look for any excuse to blame anything but the voters for the pickle we're in. And I know the media is not perfect, and I know there's major media has its problems and has its flaws and makes mistakes or bad judgments, but media has never been perfect. But we are on a relative scale. I think we have grown more selfish and less community-based and less interested in our, as a whole. Obviously not every single person. Many people care about their community and interact and see bigger things, but I think it's much more widespread than we realize. Like JFK said today, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Not to sound like a conservative here, but I think a lot of people would go, you'd see a lot of tweets of, no, that's why I voted for you. Is this really the best we can do? Politicians who get power and then tell us to do stuff. But at the time, there was a spirit of, yes, let's all make our country better. Let's do, whether it's World War II or the race to the moon or whatever, I think we have lost that sense. Like, we have existential problems. We had COVID. Yeah. Look how we failed that as a nation. Climate change, it's done. Like, we're not I hate to say this because you know how much it's important to me and I know how important it is to you. I don't know what we need, a technological savior. We need something because the people will not sacrifice. Whenever I see things about gas, I'm going, wow, I guess we could never tax gas, even though that's what like economists and climate people say, carbon taxes is the way. We can't do it. We can't because we are increasingly selfish. And I'm sorry, I really do think 9/11 was pre-smartphone. I don't think if 9/11 happened today, we would not see George Bush. Many people, including myself, thought that election was stolen from Al Gore, who's still one of my favorite, if not my favorite politician ever.
Wow.
And 91% of America was supporting George W. Bush after 9/11. Okay? And that was less than a year after people believed the election, for good reason, not saying it was, but for good reason, believed real shady shenanigans had gone on to take that election. And yet 91%, which obviously means lots of Democrats, rallied around the flag and the president because we saw the attack on 9/11 as bigger.
There was a unity,
politics.
There was a unity around the suffering, the shock of the attack. It brought people together. And you say no matter what, if that happened today, we wouldn't see that type of unity. We'd be at each other's throats. We'd be blaming. Yes. It was no way we would come together the way that we did even that many years ago. Yeah, although in a related story, I did see that, and to pivot towards Kamala Harris, who we haven't talked about, I saw Steve Kornacki. Do you like the Kornacki? Kornacki was
I'm a John King guy. This has become like a LeBron MJ in terms of touchscreen election skills.
What he said was, we haven't seen a positive surge for any presidential candidate since the surge of support for George W. Bush after 9/11 that we're seeing for Kamala Harris in these past few weeks. And I don't know how accurate that is, but it certainly does feel that way, that a lot has changed. So that's not to the point of what you're saying, which is having community and unity after a tragedy. But to see that kind of enthusiasm for her, just want to use that point to pivot towards your thoughts on how her campaign is going and the demands from so many in mainstream media for her to talk to them. That's a really interesting narrative that we're seeing play out. The corporate media is pissed, the CNNs, the New York Times, that she's not giving interviews. Bret Stephens back again on Real Time, making that point over and over. And I subscribed to that point up until very recently when I realized how bad so many of the questions and the handling of her campaign have been by that mainstream media, A, and B, the bottom line is you can control the narrative in so many ways by going directly to voters and supporters through social media. So what are your thoughts on her campaign, how she's doing, and that specific criticism that she's not giving enough interviews to those types?
I think it's a somewhat fair criticism to a point, as you said. because the way Brett Stevens, I know he got a lot of heat for his column, and I've been very annoyed with the sort of earn my vote people. I'm more of a earn my reelection vote. You've already got my vote as a non-rapist, non-traitor. But I get what he was saying to a certain degree, because there is a sort of, I don't even know if he was saying win my vote, but he's give me more information so I can make a normal vote. And the woman who was with him on Real Time, I think, is it Stephanie Rule from MSNBC?
Yep.
She asked exactly, and it wasn't contentious, but she asked him exactly the question I wanted. She said, so let's say Kamala Harris gives you her Middle East policy. She fleshes it out and you don't agree with it. Now what? And he didn't quite answer that. Bill moved it on, but it was like, I thought that was a good, because it was like, hey, you're not voting for Donald Trump. That is, you've established that, and that's good. Thank you. But you obviously aren't going to agree with everything she does. But if she has a plan, a strategy, and obviously you can't expect her to align with you as a right-wing Israel hawk, but if she gives you something and gives you the pathway or a strategy, is that enough? And I would have liked to have heard the answer to that question, because this idea of saying, hey, she's given me nothing is fair. But if you're saying she's giving me nothing and I'd like her to give me exactly what I want, that ain't happening.
Right.
But I think she has been overall smart with her strategy. As much as people can complain, the danger is that the media becomes its own story and gins up the way Hillary's emails became a bigger story than it should have been, that Kamala's silence begins to become its own story. And the media keeps feeding it, and it becomes this, why is she silent? What's she hiding? And I almost posted a thing where I was like, Kamala Harris, this is actually true in my opinion, has great legs, and she doesn't show them. What else is she hiding?
That's a good point. That's a really interesting point. It's true of a lot of people, though. It's true of a lot of people.
And I think she's doing it for business. I think she just wants to present, but I think she's extremely attractive. And I don't think we get to say that as the left, the way the right, if a hot woman puts together two good sentences, they're like, rising star, get her a contract with Fox. Whereas it's like, Kamala Harris is pretty hot in my opinion. It's like,
I think I get to say it because I'm on the record and have been.
You're a girl dad.
No, not that, because I've been very consistent in talking about how attractive I think certain male politicians are.
Okay.
I think without the sexism, which I'm not saying you're presenting, I'm saying it matters.
I'll try harder then. Sorry, I meant to.
Oh, fair enough. I'll give you another opportunity. The point is, it matters if you're attractive and you're trying to sell anything. It just that's why they put attractive people on commercials, to sell anything from car insurance to laundry detergent. Not everybody. All right,
but I think she's smart what she's doing, because I think if you could put a lie detector up to her, I wouldn't be surprised if she said, no, I'm not going to be the only candidate who has to feed the media's need and the population's need for a real candidate who does real things. If Trump gets to have no standards, no expectations, no decency, no fact-finding, no fact-check, why do I have to sacrifice myself at the altar of good journalism and normal politics when we don't live in that world anymore? You won't hold Donald Trump accountable, and to be fair, you really can't hold him accountable. So instead, just like I've made my point, and unfortunately this was an old Bill Maher bit that I only realized recently that I didn't steal from him, but I had the bit on Tallboy about Democrats being the single moms of America and the deadbeat dads were Republicans. I found out that was a 2019 new rule from Bill Maher, which I did not know or remember when I made my bit, and I did a little differently, obviously. But I think this is that playing out again, where dad won't do anything right. So now there's actually a double need. There's a double need in the media and in the voters for someone to step up and be a normal candidate and answer all the questions and give us all the policy, because dad's giving us 0. So mom can't just give us 50. We need her to give us 100. Then we'll divide it by 2 and feel like we had a full. And I think I think if you asked her off the record or something, I wouldn't be surprised if she was like, yeah, I'm not going to nobly sacrifice my lead to be the one normal candidate so you can tear me apart because you only have me and my plans to tear apart.
Yeah, it's a smart strategy, no matter if you like it or not, in terms of transparency or just journalism and democracy. You present that perfectly well with that metaphor. Let me ask you, because she's accepted the debate with CNN, apparently. He has not yet. Do you think that's a good idea? And he's got to show up, right? He can't say no.
I don't know, honestly, at this point, what's in his head. And I know I've been the Trump whisperer to a certain extent, but at this point, he is, for old movie fans that listen to this show, he's at the Captain Queeg, Kane Mutiny, Strawberries level of paranoia. He has no interest in a debate. I don't think. He doesn't want to look like a coward, but I think she knows he can't beat her, because the best he could do is not go crazy during a second debate. But it's not like he's going to unveil big plans and a rope-a-dope strategy, if he were normal, would be a great idea. Hey, I'll throw the first debate, lower expectations, and then we'll come up with detailed plans and strategies and lines of attack. That would be brilliant, to be honest. Risky, but brilliant.
But impossible, because he's like a fish. He's like a fish.
It's him. So like Kamala Harris can feel safe in going, yeah, he can't. It's not in his makeup to be able to flip the script like that. So I don't know if he'll accept. I think it'd be great if he'd accept. I actually have a Kamala Harris and Donald Trump chocolate bar that I bought in D.C. So I'm going to do a debate between the two chocolate bars on my YouTube channel soon. I think the only reason he would do it is if there's no more opportunities for big media events or a big story that can swing things, and he's just like restless. If he gets restless enough, he'll agree to one, because he can't sit on the sidelines. He'd rather fuck up with the spotlight than not have the spotlight.
I think you're right. I think you'll have to say yes, because he's too afraid of being painted as a coward to a woman, much less a black woman. All right, just going to ask you, have you paid any attention to, have you read about this whole P. Diddy situation?
A little bit.
Is it important? Do we need to talk about it?
I don't know. I think what I always thought, and I wasn't the only one, but when Me Too was coming for sort of executives and actors, I kept thinking to myself, I feel like Me Too may never come to the music industry, because it's so
baked in.
If you think it's bad in Hollywood,
right?
Casting couches, every weekend on some tour for the last 50 or 60 years, Me Too stuff was probably going on. Whether it's underage, whether it's harassment, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's degrading or non-consensual things. And now you add in tech and recordings and things like that. Obviously, just like Trump is baked in as a piece of shit, so he gets a lower bar, music also did have the advantage of being like rock star lifestyle. Nobody says like actor lifestyle. Rock star lifestyle is what you aspire to. Just sex, drugs, fun, no consequences, consent all around, drugs, party, wake up, do it again. That's a cliche. And I think if you looked at I shouldn't say this dismissively. I just didn't think it would come to this, because I feel like there could be a never-ending supply. Now, Diddy is a particularly heinous example, because this goes beyond just mistreating a groupie or a questionable affair or a hookup.
Right.
This is like a systematic enterprise of like really deplorable shit. So it's awful. But I would just be curious how deep they'll go generally into the music business, because I just feel like, at some point you're just like, does every band of the last 50 years have stuff like this? And I'm not diminishing it. I'm saying at some point, is it just, we're doing a mass arrest of music? But Diddy, my uncle once had a joke about when the Daily News had a cover in the 80s when Mick Jagger, David Bowie's ex-wife or Mick Jagger's ex-wife caught them in bed together. That was the tabloid story. And they had that awful duet of Dancing in the Streets that was out. So the Daily News had the cover, Dancing in the Sheets. It was like perfect. And I remember my uncle saying to me years later, he was like, I think for guys like that, meaning Bowie and Jagger, they get to a point, they're in their 50s, their entire life has been stadium rock, sex, orgies, sex, stadium rock, drugs, sex, stadium rock. And these are huge. These aren't just, hey, we're really pop. These are icons. These are the top of the rock lifestyle. And he just said to me, I think at some point these guys become like Roman emperors and they're just like, I just want something different. I need to try something that's different that can get me buzzed, get me feeling something. It's worth experimenting because by the 3000th model, I'm like, all right, women are pretty cool, but it's not giving me the same high. And I feel like Diddy this is an exaggerate where it's like the power, he's a mogul. So you've got like CEO issues and mogul arrogance. And it's, hey, what if Harvey Weinstein were also Mick Jagger? I think that would make somebody a pretty big terror when it comes to the opposite sex.
Oh my God.
It's like, yes. I am a rock star and a billionaire CEO in one.
Like, and a kingmaker.
And I'm not making excuses. I'm saying it is very believable that a average person could become a monster. But if you start as a piece of shit or you have those qualities already in you, it's almost like an inevitability that he would become this kind of garbage person.
Yeah, and your original point of when would Me Too get to rock and rollers and hip-hop artists, etc. Finally, you are now apparently starring in an off-Broadway production, which is a pretty big deal. It sounds like a big deal. First time hearing of it right before we started. Yeah. And I'll mention all your stand-up dates, of course, but tell us what this is exciting.
That was just code. I'm coming out as a gay man.
Because of off-Broadway?
No, that's code. That's theater code. No, I'm kidding. I am it's called Dictator for a Day, and the info will be on my website by the time this episode goes up. But I was asked by these sort of writers and producers it's only a 3-show run. So it's not like I'm going to be off Broadway for months, because what they really want to do is have a few live shows and then tape them and edit it into either to be pitched as a long running live show or as something to stream. So it's a nice payday. It's a fun show. It's a lot of work because we're basically from start to finish. This is like a month to memorize pages and pages of monologues and put on the show and arrange it. So October 4th, 5th, and 6th will be the 3 dates of the shows of this. So that info will be on my website. If anybody's in Manhattan or New York City and interested in that, it will be a fun show. But obviously, in addition to that, I'd, of course, love people to go to my shows in Jersey, New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Hartford.
I worry about the JL curse, which is really just your own negative self-outlook. And you do great. They sell that. You do you're Trump. You're performing as Trump. They sell it, and then they replace you with a lesser talented, more famous actor.
Yeah. No, you know what? This is one of those ones where...
So I'm saying you should get a guarantee. If they sell it, you get to keep the gig.
That's true. But I think if it were sold, it would be sold partly on the strength of what I do.
I hope so.
So I feel good about it. It's a lot of pressure, though. It's just, this is what I want. Not this necessarily, but I want to be paid to do entertainment and comedy things, whatever they may be. Yeah. But it's pressure putting other people's words. Obviously, I've co-written my own material. They wanted me to co-write it because they know how good I am in it. But it's still a lot of pressure to make sure. I love writing things for other people. That's the weird thing. As big an ego I have, I love when I write something and see other people make what I wrote really good. And I feel that pressure on me where it's like when I write my own stuff, that's easy. But I feel an obligation you want to do for someone else. You want to make them feel like their work was in the right hands, a voice or whatever. Yeah, that's October 4th, 5th, and 6th in Midtown Manhattan. Info will be on my website. And obviously, thank you as always for plugging the 2 podcasts, which I hope I know plenty of your listeners listen, and I hope more will start listening to my 2 shows.
Thank you very much, as always. Much appreciated. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, there he goes, JL Cauvin, everybody. Go let him know that you heard him here on the show. Always a hit, one of my favorite commentators. And go support him. Go see him at those dates I mentioned. Follow him on social media. Let him know you heard him here. Write a rating and review of this podcast if you haven't before on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Subscribe on YouTube as well as TikTok and everywhere else. I'm on them all. Thank you so much for tuning in today, for pressing play, telling your friends, and being part of our community. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Jon Carroll is a Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter, and he writes all the music for this show, including this song. Go pay him, johncarroll.org. Send him a couple bucks, buy his music, and that's all I've got for you, Bumblebees. Love you. Talk to you tomorrow.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.